Hey YouTube, this is Tom at TM Aquatics, and I hope everyone's having a great day. It's been about a month since I uploaded my last video here on the YouTube platform, so I thought it was about time that I give everybody a quick update and a tour around the fish room here at TM Aquatics. We have a lot of things breeding, a lot of changes coming up here, and I'm real excited to share it with you. So I do hope you stick around and check this one out. Alright YouTube, we're going to kick things off by starting out here in the rec room with this 75-gallon tank. This is where I keep my big group of red coral pencilfish. And this tank's coming along okay. I'd like to get some more plants for this tank, to be honest. It's a little sparse, and I kind of envision something a little more heavily planted. I do have an empty CO2 tank as well and a couple of additional lights that I'm not using. And I'm considering maybe increasing the light, changing out the substrate a little bit, adding some aqua soil in there, and maybe converting this thing into a high light or medium to high light CO2 injected tank for the pencilfish. I just envision them swimming through a really, really lush tank, just filled with lots of plants, and that just simply isn't happening with the current design of this tank. But overall, things are real healthy. We have about 50 red coral pencilfish in this tank. That is, these are all captive bred here in my fish room at TM Aquatics. I am not selling these fish. I've been asked several times if I'm going to be selling the red coral pencilfish. I am not. In fact, I sold a bunch last year, instantly regretted it because I think they just look fantastic in larger groups. And I'm actually planning to try and breed another 30, 40, 50 here in the fish room, getting a couple tanks ready for that. But anyways, enough on this tank. Everything else is doing real good, but enough on this tank. Let's keep moving so we don't get too long with this video. Alright YouTube, we're still out in the rec room, and over here is my 120-gallon L134 tank. I have a large colony of leopard frog plecos. I forget how many I have in here, probably 28, 29, something like that. And they just recently reached sexual maturity and started spawning for me. I've had a couple of spawns, and no fry have resulted from those spawns yet. I think the males are still trying to figure out their role. Gotta have patience. They'll figure it out eventually as they mature. But they're coming along nicely, and the colony looks really well split between males and females, so I'm real happy about that. You might also notice something different in this tank. We picked up some new fish. These are albino threadfin acaras. These are some juveniles I picked up from Dan's Fish. Added these to the fish room about a month ago. They're doing fantastic. They've probably put on, well, the larger ones have probably put on about an inch since I got them. No idea if they're males, females, combination of both, or whatever. I really have no intentions on breeding them. But these fish just absolutely turn into a stunning, stunning showpiece fish as they get older and they mature. As I said, they're still juveniles right now, and they look a little washed out with the white sand and whatnot, but this is a fish that I have really been eyeing for probably 3-4 years now, and have always wanted to grab some when I was when they had them at the LFS. Never did. Saw that Dan had 6 of them left, and decided, what the heck. Let's pull the trigger and let's get some life into this tank, because let's be honest, a Pleco tank can be very void of activity, if you know what I mean. So anyways, glad to have added them. They're doing fantastic, and a nice addition here at TM Aquatics. Alright YouTube, so we're back in the fish room now, and we'll start out with this first rack right here, which is a triple stack of 40 breeders. And up in this top tank, I have 2 different groups of fish. I have 13 L174s in this tank, and then I have 13 L471s. Now there's a couple of bushy nose Pleco fry growing out in here as well. But these fish all came from Dan's Fish. I shouldn't say that, actually. All of the L471 mini snowballs came from Dan, and 7 of the L174s came from Dan. The other 6 came from someone I know that's down in Des Moines, Iowa, that breeds quite a few fish. Now, when I originally picked these fish up, and again, there's 13 of each of those 2 high Pansistrus species. One group was going to be in this tank. The other group was going to be going into this tank here. Unfortunately, or fortunately, it's a good problem to have, my L134s have been spawning so much this year that I needed another grow out tank. And there's actually about 50 L134s growing out in this tank right here. So I needed to use this tank for L134 grow outs. And that was never in my original plans, but again, a good problem to have. So eventually I'll be splitting up the L471 and the 174s. One group will stay up here, the other group will be moved down here. Now this bottom 40 breeder was always intended to be yet another grow out tank, and this is where I have my oldest L134 juveniles. And again, in here there's about 50 in this tank as well. So quite a few L134s growing out, and it doesn't look like the adults are done spawning yet. So I'm hoping to end up with 150 to 200 L134s by the time those adults shut down for the breeding season. So anyways, good problems to have. And that's what we have going on in these three tanks right here. Alright, so the next group of tanks is this rack right here. There's a 33 long on the top, a 55 in the middle, and then we have a 40 long down here on the bottom. Now up here on the top, we'll start up here. This is where I keep my group of zebra plecos. I have a total of 9 zebra plecos in my colony. I did have 10, but I lost one about, I don't know, 4 months ago or so. It was never really a healthy looking fish. I always had a really, really swollen belly and just kind of an odd shape to it. So I'm not glad it passed away, but it was one that always was of concern for me. So out of the remaining 9 fish, 5 are adults and 4 are still what I would consider subadults. Now, the original 5 adults, those are all female, I believe, and the 4 subadults that I picked up 2 years ago from Jeremy Bash at Cataclysm, I believe a couple of those are males, just based on their head shape, body shape, and the way they posture once in a while when they go inside of a cave. So fingers are crossed that we have at least, you know, a couple of males in there, because I am very female heavy on my group, which is a good problem to have, but still a problem if your intent and goal is to breed. You need one of each sex to breed, as we know. So anyways, enough on that. Down below, this is where I keep my adult wild caught group, my original group of L134 leopard frog plecos. They've been very productive so far this year with about 120 juveniles. Actually, it's probably been a little bit more, because I've sold about 20 or 25 in the local market here, and I think I'm growing out about 120 still, maybe 115 or so, but they're doing really good. No issues with this group. They just keep doing what they're supposed to be doing, and the male's been guarding the eggs, fanning the eggs, and not eating them like my previous male, so that's always good. The brood sizes have been, the spawn sizes have been a little bit smaller than what I normally see. They've been averaging around 20 to 22, and in the past spawn sizes were as high as 40 plus at one point. But as long as they keep producing and the male's not eating the eggs, I'm okay with that. So anyways, that's what we have going on in here is my L134 adult wild-caught group. And then down here in this 40 long, this is where I have my Scleromy Barbados. Now, this is a real fun fish, and one of my favorite fish that I have in the fish room. Strangely though, they don't sell very well, and I'm not quite sure why that is. It might be because of their water requirements, and when I say that, it's nothing special other than they're a cooler water fish. Now, they come out of southern Brazil from Rio de Janeiro down to the Uruguay border along the coastline, and the water temps are a little more temperate there, so they like their temperatures anywhere between 60 to 75. This tank runs at about 70 to 71 on average. There's no heater in here, so that might be why they don't sell as well, as most people usually have heated fish tanks keeping the temps around 76 to 78. And I'm sure you could keep these fish at those temps. They might not be as happy, and it might cut a little bit of time off their life, but it's probably possible. But these fish get about 4 inches in size. The males are every bit of 4 inches, I would say, at this point. They can be a little territorial, and the males will periodically spar with one another, but they really never do any damage. But kind of a neat prehistoric look to them. Very personable fish as far as like Corydoras and catfish go, because when they're hungry, and sometimes when I walk into the fish room, they'll start banging the glass like cichlids. So not a shy fish at all, and again, really surprised that they don't sell well. I am raising out about 100 juveniles right now, and I've stopped picking eggs and hatching these fish out because I don't want to end up with more than I can sell in any given year. So anyways, Scleromy Barbados, a real interesting fish and a very, very easy fish to keep, and I really don't find any challenges in breeding them if you're interested in a new breeding project. Now, next to the Scleromy adult tank, this is a 27-gallon tote where I have a bunch of juvenile Scleromy Barbados growing out. I'm really not going to shine a light or anything like that, but just filled with a bunch of Scleromy babies. And I do multiple water changes on this tote because there's so many fish down in that tote right now, but they're doing great. And they're all about a quarter or inch and a quarter to an inch and a half at this point. Definitely ready for selling and ready to ship to new homes when I start shipping later this spring. Then up above them, I have 5 20-gallon grow-out tanks, and they're still a little empty. I was hoping to have more fish in each of these tanks by now, but these first two 20 gallons over here on the right, those are filled with a bunch of green laser Corydoras. I'm growing out about 100 right now in the fish room. And normally this time of the year, I usually have about 200 of these things ready to go. And just haven't been getting the productivity out of any of the Corydoras this breeding season. Only getting about a 10% hatch and survival rate out of each spawn. So not like it's been in the past where hatch and survival rates have been 50 to 75%. Something's going on. I haven't been able to figure it out yet. I've tried all types of different techniques to hatch the fry or hatch the eggs and keep the fry alive and whatnot, but it's just been one of those years. So it's been a little bit of a struggle, but we still have about 100 green lasers. In this tank here we have I don't know, I think there's like 25 orange Venezuelanus or Corydoras Venezuelanus. Common hobby name is orange Venezuelan Corys. I don't know, 25 or 30 in this tank. Right here, the nemesis to my fish room. Not a fish that I intentionally breed, but one that just happens to breed at will. I've tried to split the males and females up, but just blue-eyed bushy-nosed Plecos. Nothing special. In this tank here, I have about 20 or 21 Corydoras Kanakis. These are a newer fish that I picked up from Eric Bodrock last year. I think there's 21 in here right now, and I have a couple more in one of the 10-gallon grow-outs. It's my understanding that Eric collected the adults personally when he was on a collection trip to Peru. I don't know if the fish that I have came from the original wild caught, so I don't know if they're F1 or if they came maybe from a second generation making them an F2. I don't know, but Corydoras Kanakis, just a real neat looking Corydoras. Common name is the Morse code Corydoras. We'll have a few of these available come spring. Okay, so the next rack is this one here where I have 7 10-gallon tanks on the top. And over here on the left, a bunch of Corydoras Venezuelanus. And I think there might also be Scleromy in there, and there might be a couple of lasers in there, and I think that's it. I don't think there's any Axelrod in that tank. In this tank here, it's again all pretty much Corydoras Venezuelanus. There may be a Duplicarius or 2 in here, but it's mainly Corydoras Venezuelanus. So you can see I got quite a few of those growing out when you add these tanks with that other 20-gallon, and I have another 10-gallon tank down here full of orange Venezuelanus. So like the Barbados, I've also suspended picking any eggs from the Corydoras Venezuelanus at this point. Real easy fish to spawn. You know, a good beginner catfish, the Corydoras Venezuelanus. No challenges at all to spawn and breed that fish. Here I have, there's 11 Corydoras bozemanii in here. Been a pretty slow year for Bozemanite, but there's 11 growing out in here. This is all the orange lasers that I have. I don't have my orange lasers in a dedicated breeding tank right now, so I'm lucky that I even have these, but I don't know how many's in here, 10 to 15, somewhere in there, but these are orange lasers. They'll all be available this spring. Hopefully we'll get a few more. In this tank here, there's a few, I think there's like 6 green lasers growing out and 2 Corydoras Kanakis growing out in here. And then in this tank here, we have a bunch of orange Venezuelanus. We have some Corydoras Duplicarius growing out in here, and we have a bunch of Corydoras Equus growing out in here. And then in this tank here, I'm just using this to hatch eggs. I have 2 egg tumblers. This is kind of a new approach to see if we get a little better hatch rate. Egg tumblers are set real low, so it's just enough movement for the eggs to wiggle a little bit. But I just picked these eggs today, and on the left tumbler, these are Corydoras Duplicarius eggs. There's about 25 or 30, and then over here, there's about 25 or 30 Corydoras Kanaki eggs. And we're going to see if this works a little bit better than some of the other techniques that I've been using this year. So, but that's what we have over in that tank. So underneath the 10-gallon tanks, we have a couple of 40 breeders, and then down on the bottom we have another 40 and a 29. And we'll start out over here. This 40 breeder is where I keep my CW 049s, the black diamond Corydoras. This is one of your more rare or hard to source Corys in the hobby, and they are known to be somewhat of a challenge to breed. Now, I originally started with 14, I think, and I picked up, what, 2 or 3 more earlier this year or last October at Cataclysm. I've had a few die over the last couple of years, but I have managed to spawn or breed and grow out, I don't know, it's not been a lot, maybe 6 to 8. So I've never sold any, and currently I think there's 22 or 23 in there, so do the math. I bought some, lost some, spawned a few. They just pop up here and there, and but overall it's not been really I haven't had a lot of success with them. So now recently I did add a wave maker, a Siche, I forget the model number, but I think it moves like 2,000 liters or 2,000 gallons an hour, but not a real big one, but enough to create a little bit of water movement in here. And ever since I added that additional water movement, it has triggered a couple larger spawns, and we did have some success. So up here in this fry box, if you see that, the camera will focus, we have about 15 CW49. So this is my biggest success so far with this catfish, or this Corydoras. Really excited about that. In fact, you know, having this many, I'll probably make these available for sale once they're done growing out. So if you're looking for a beautiful Corydoras, just a real striking Corydoras, and you're up for more of a challenging type Corydoras, these will be available for sale later this spring. Now, they're not a cheap fish. They're not a $6 to $10 panda Cory. These usually are priced in that $25 give or take range per fish. So understand what you're buying, understand the fish, understand the value of the fish, and yeah, these will be available. Now, up in this fry box, there's 2 more. I have 2 more little tiny fries, juveniles growing out there. Still on microworms right now at this point, but doing well, so I'm expecting those 2 to survive as well. So might end up with as many as 17, and I've been seeing some spawning activity in here today. So maybe they're getting ready to drop a few more eggs for me to pick over the next couple of days. But that's what we have over here. Tank next to them, this is where I have my Corydoras Equus. These guys have been going through a simulated dry season. You can see the water level's a little bit low. Water looks a little filled with tannins. I have not done a water change on this tank in like almost 3 months. pH is down to about 6 where I need it, and the temperature's been bumped up a little bit. They've been not getting as much food as they normally do, and that's to simulate the dry season. When TDS goes up, temperatures go up, food source goes down, and I'm just about to the point where I want to start hitting them with the wet season now, so I'll start giving them a series of big water changes and just pumping in just a tremendous amount of food, kicking off the wet season, drop the temperature a little bit, it'll drop the TDS, and we'll see if that triggers them to spawn. The females are gravid, so you know it's possible, but this particular fish is known to be extremely challenging to breed, even by the Corydoras experts, and just having them spawn is considered a success, yet alone getting eggs to hatch and successfully growing out fry. So it tells you how difficult this particular Corydoras is. So Corydoras Equus. Down below in this 29-gallon tank, this is where I have my Corydoras Weitzmani. These are the newest additions to the fish room. I picked up 15 of these at Cataclysm back in October. I did lose 3 of them, so I'm down to 12 right now. No idea on, you know, males, females, nothing like that, but they're still growing out. They are called the 2 Saddled Cory, and as recent as about 8 or 9, maybe 10 years ago, they were considered one of the holy grail Corydoras in the hobby. But Corydoras Weitzmani kind of look like a skunk Cory with the additional saddle, the black saddle in the middle. And hopefully we'll be able to get some success out of these guys. Now, I mentioned earlier with the red coral pencilfish, I would like to spawn them. I am planning to add some red coral pencilfish, maybe 1 male and 2 females to this tank right here. I'm growing out a bunch of hornwort to add cover for the fry and the females to get away from the male. And I need to add a bunch of Java moss on the bottom. But I do plan to put some red coral pencilfish in here, and do hope to spawn anywhere from, you know, another 30 to another 50 and make those available, because a lot of people have been asking me for the red coral pencilfish. But anyways, this tank right now just has the Corydoras Weitzmani. Now next to the Weitzmani tank, another 40 breeder. We've got a couple things going on here. In this fry box we have more L134s up in there, and I forget how many are in there, 7 or 8 or something like that. You can see them. They're almost getting to the size where I can drop them in a 40 breeder. Well, there's a bunch of L134s. But this is where I have my L260s that I'm growing out. And there are a total of 30 L260s in here. And that's too many fish for a 40 breeder. So I do have plans to split this group up and either put them in a larger tank or split them up and put them in 2 separate tanks. So these are all L260s that I grew out, spawned and grew out here in the fish room. But let me show you what the plans are for the L260s. Alright, so those L260s are going to be going into this tank right here. You take a look at that. This is one of the new 60 breeders. I posted this on Instagram and YouTube about a month ago. I picked this up. Aqueon came out with a new size tank, the 60 breeder. Pretty much the same width and height dimensions of a 40 breeder. It's just a 4-foot long tank versus a 36-inch tank. So same footprint as a 75. It's just about 5 inches shorter than the 75, which works out perfect for me. So let's go back into the fish room and I'll explain further what the plans are. So we've already agreed and established the fact that there's too many L260s down in this tank. I don't want to get rid of any. I want to have a couple groups of L260s. We picked up the new 60 breeder. Now originally I was thinking about pulling down 5 of these 10-gallon tanks and throwing the 60 breeder up here. But I really need these 10-gallon tanks for grow-outs. So my wife has been working real hard on purging a lot of stuff out of the other half of the room here, which is her storage room. You can see these shelves are pretty empty. This shelf is pretty empty. And she still has a bunch of stuff over here that she's going through. But now originally this room, when we built the house 10 years ago, this entire room was filled with these plastic shelves and full of stuff that she didn't want to get rid of. But she's done a great job getting rid of stuff and finally realizing that you can't hold everything forever. So as she's been clearing stuff out, I've been adding more tanks and more racks. So we're to the point now where I can take all of my shipping supplies and some of my parts that I'm not using, move all this onto that rack, take all my medicines or medications, water conditioners, and all the food that I use on a regular basis. Move all this stuff over onto this rack, and that will free up this floor space right here. This floor space. And guess what fits right down here perfectly? This is a 36-inch wide shelf, so we have another 6 inches over here, another 7 or 8 inches over here. So guess what will fit down there perfectly? A triple stack rack of 60 breeders. So that is what I'm planning to do, add 360 breeders to this spot right here. Now some of you might be saying, hey Tom, you've told me before, you promised your wife you'd never add or request any more space in the fish room. That is true. I've not requested it, but she's been doing this all on herself, getting rid of stuff. So if the space exists, I'm going to use it. So we're going to add 360 breeders here. We'll move those L260s up into one of those tanks, or maybe move them into 2 tanks and have 2 groups. And that'll leave me a third 60 breeder for either grow outs, another group of L397s, another group of L134s, or maybe a new fish like the L82s or L236. We'll have to wait and see. But anyways, that's the plan, and that's what we have going down in this tank right now. And that wraps up this rack right here. All right, so moving along, this rack, we have 220 longs on top, a 20 standard or 20 high in the middle, and a 40 breeder. Same thing down here, 40 breeder and a 20 high. The top left tank, that's where I have my Corydoras axelrodi, and they'll probably dart off. Oh, there were some. Yep, they just don't like the camera. That's where I have a breeding group of adult Corydoras axelrodi. In this tank, I'm getting ready to do a complete tear down and reset it. It's just gotten a little overgrown and whatnot, but it's good to do that every once in a while. Just reset it, and you'd be surprised how that can spark or trigger some breeding activity. Next to them, I have my Corydoras Duplicarius. They've been spawning. In fact, I just pulled those 20-25 eggs earlier today from the Duplicarius, but haven't had, again, a lot of success in fertilization and hatch rates, but just a real beautiful Corydoras, the Duplicarius. Down below, this is where I have my Corydoras bozemanii, and they've not spawned for me for a month or 2. And even when they do spawn, their spawn sizes are very small, and I've not had a lot of success hatching and growing out. So real nice looking fish. The males will sometimes have the appearance of a real tall dorsal fin. They kind of have the pattern of like a dwarf cory, like a Corydoras hasbrosus, but they're a much larger fish at about 2 inches, 1.25 to 2 inches. These are the Corydoras bozemanii. Not an easy fish to source, and not a cheap fish once you find them. So hopefully I'll have a few available. I think, like I said, I have 10 or 11 over here in this tank here, though. Those will be available this spring. So I think last year they were selling for like $16 or $18. They might, they'll probably be in that range again. I'm going to say 18, give or take. The Corydoras bozemanii, real nice looking Corydoras. This here is where I have my adult Kanakis, and looks like they have an egg there, a couple eggs on the glass, a couple eggs right there, another one on the plant right there, a couple more here. So I already pulled about 20 or 25 eggs earlier, but it doesn't look like they're quite done, so I'll be back in here later today picking the rest of the eggs before the little baby Plecos get to them. But these are the adult group of Corydoras Kanakis. Down below, this is where I have my Corydoras venezuelanus, or orange Venezuelan. Looks like they're all back there right now. But an easy Corydoras to keep, and an easy Corydoras to spawn. Probably right up there with the albino Corys, the Paleatus, and the panda Cory as far as degree of difficulty. In fact, I've stopped pulling the eggs, as you saw earlier. I've got I don't know, 125 maybe, plus or minus, growing out here in the fish room. I don't need any more orange Venezuelanus. And then over here, hiding as always, even though there's a bunch of dither fish in here, a bunch of Vietnamese white cloud, this is where I have my green lasers. And again, it's been a really slow year for the green lasers. Last year I was getting spawn sizes of 125 to maybe 150, 160. This year the spawn sizes have all been around 20 to 25. And then you add into that the fact that the fertilization or hatch rate has been extremely low this year. Probably about 10% for all of the Corys in the fish room except for the Venezuelanus and the Scleromy stacks. I've only had about a 10% hatch and success or survival rate. Normally it's 50%, 75%. This year it's just something's different. Haven't been able to figure it out. But there's, I think I have, I don't know, 16 to 18 adult green lasers in here somewhere. I do have a fry box with a few more green lasers growing out. There's, I don't know, 10, 12, something like that. There's little itty bitties, so, you know, not big numbers, but they do add up over time. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little bit disappointed in the success rate this year with the Corydoras. So, but it is what it is. Don't dwell on it, just accept it, try and figure it out, and move on. Alright, we're in the home stretch here with the last few tanks here in the fish room. Down here, this is a grow out tank. Now, a couple things going on here. I do have about 25 L397 juveniles remaining here in the fish room. I have been selling some in the off season, local sales. I did have a couple of bushy nose Plecos in here to kind of help keep things clean, and they did what they do. They spawned, so now I have a bunch of bushy nose in here, which I would like to get them out. I'm going to shut this fan off. Hopefully it's not creating too much noise. There we go. But I still have, I don't know, 25 L397 juveniles growing out in here somewhere. Now I did have quite a few more than that, and we'll switch over to the adult tank. I believe I mentioned this months ago, but I lost my entire breeding colony of L397s last year, about a year ago, except for 3 adults. 1 male, 1 female. The third one I thought was a female. Now I think it might be a male. I just haven't gotten a really good look at it, but there's only 3 adults left in here. Now the good news is, okay, the male's in there. Let me get my flashlight real quick. I'm going to put this on pause. I'll be right back. Okay, so my male is in this cave here, and he's been fanning quite a bit. And if you look there, right next to him, there's a tail sticking out, and in this cave, there's a tail sticking out. They have all these other caves, but the other 2 fish have been moving closer and closer to his cave, which makes me want to believe that they're both female, and because he just started, his body odontodes just came in maybe a month ago, and he's really been spending a lot of time in the cave fanning. I think he's coming into quote-unquote season. Hopefully they are as well. One of them is just extremely gravid. The confirmed female is really gravid. So hopefully we'll get some breeding activity out of them. But you can see next to that cave, you can see that tail back there. Let's see if we can find any more. Boy, normally I can see a whole bunch. But I hand selected about a dozen juveniles out of the grow out tank and added to this tank some months back. Nope, I thought I saw another one. So we are trying to, get this colony back to, 12 to 15 fish, and it is what it is. So that's what we have going on in here. 3 adults and a bunch of juveniles growing out. Another year they'll be breeding size. They don't take too long to sexually mature the 397s. So next year at this time, we'll be getting quite a bit of productivity out of this group. So anyways, up above, last tank, this is where I keep my group of L494s. They're Picoltia, same family as the leopard frog Plecos. Just absolutely stunning fish. And you can see my male right here. Just see the body odontodes on him. I mean, he is ready. He is ready to go. He's got a female sitting up right here. Really fat, chunky girl over here. Not sure if that's a male or female. Looks pretty wide through the midriff. But he's got a bunch of girls in there. He's ready to go. But so far, no spawning out of the L494s. But patience is absolutely crucial and the #1 trait you can have if you're going to keep Plecos and you want to be successful with Plecos is you have to have a lot of patience. So just a matter of time before these guys kick it off and get things going and get the party started. So anyways, that wraps up all the tanks that we currently have at TM Aquatics, and we even talked about a few tanks that aren't here yet. All right, YouTube, well, that wraps things up for this fish room tour and update at TM Aquatics. I hope you enjoyed what you saw. I also hope that I earned your subscription. If you like what you saw, hit the thumbs up. If you have any comments or questions, post them down below. I'll do my best to reply when time allows. So anyways, I greatly appreciate each and every one of you taking time out of your day to watch one of my videos. Until the next one, thanks again, and we'll catch you all later.